Rich people, really rich people, are kind of dicks. Unless you have some insidious reason or perhaps some misguided reason to side with them, you'll mostly hate them instinctively. You have people like Jeff Bezos and Donald Trump, you have Elon Musk, you have Lex Luthor, you have Kingpin, and these are great examples of people who aren't good people. I remember reading a study a very long time ago about how the ultra wealthy usually don't have the kind of morals that ordinary people do. A lot of money apparently changes people for the worse. I loathe the rich. That is not to say that if I ever became rich, I wouldn't be a dick. But I'm not rich, so down with the rich. Anyway, in this show, we have someone who's really, really wealthy, Norman Osborn. Norman, I realize, is certainly a dick on several occasions, but he mostly appears to be a rather level headed and sane person. He seems, in fact, hell bent on helping people around in need and hell bent on fighting for the good guys. Even until the end, he actually seems like one of the good guys. So knowing what I know, that he'll turn into the Goblin one of these days, is sort of unsettling for me. I don't like this idea. I don't like the idea of a good guy turning bad. I hope they don't let him become the Green Goblin. I really hope they don't. I'm not a big fan of Spider-Man. Let me rephrase that. I'm not a big fan of the Spider-Man comics. I've read a bunch of Spider-Man comics, mostly borrowed from friends, and I haven't liked a single one of those comics. There are exceptions, of course, like the Straczynski run on Spider-Man, in which Straczynski introduces Ezekiel, the dude we saw in the Madam Web film. That was a fun series, but mostly I'm not a fan of the Spider-Man comics. Not entirely sure why. Come to think of it, I'm not a big fan of the Spider-Man films either. I mean, they're all entertaining. The Raimi films, yes. Even that one. The Andrew Garfield films, the Tom Holland films, they're all good entertainment. But I don't think I want to watch these films again. On the other hand, you have the animated series. Well, there are a lot of animated shows, and I'm quite sure I'll find most of them uninteresting. But there are two animated entities specifically: Into the Spider-Verse films and Your Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man. I love the hell out of these two animated franchises. Into the Spider-Verse is just brilliant storytelling. I'd like to talk some more about it, but we're going to talk about Your Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man today. And Your Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man isn't as good as the Spider-Verse films, but it's still pretty damn good. One of the show's greatest strengths, and this is something the show shares with Into the Spider-Verse, is the earnestness of the show. It feels optimistic. It feels like it's coming right from the heart. The characters all seem so sincere and earnest. I know I can't find any other words really, but the show is earnest and it feels like such a good show. It's funny, but I don't get all the optimism in the What If series or the Marvel films, but for some reason I'm more than okay with it here. Maybe in this show it feels a little more authentic. Maybe it comes from the heart and so I'm a little more partial to it. Or it could be something else entirely and I can't perceive that. I'm not sure. What I'm also not sure about is the animation style the show uses. Look, I like the animation style. I don't think it was bad, but there were instances when the animation seemed a bit odd. And I don't even know what I mean by odd. It just felt odd. I was distracted for a few moments, but the show was interesting and I just overlooked the oddness and returned to the stuff that was happening in the show, which is probably what a good show does. The story of the show, the characters, they're so interesting, you sort of overlook the show's quirks and focus on what's good. The show sort of clears the slate of the usual Spider-Man characters. You don't have Mary Jane, or you don't have Ned, you don't have Flash Thompson from the regular comics or films. Instead, you have Pearl, who's sort of Parker's love interest and a substitute for Mary Jane. She starts off as a love interest, sure, but eventually becomes a friend, I guess, and the plot thread kind of ends there. You have Nico, his best friend who comes in instead of Ned. But the twist here is that Nico is actually a magician or a sorcerer from the Runaways comic. I barely remember reading the comic back when it was free on some Marvel PC app. But I kind of like this Nico from the cartoon quite a bit. Instead of Flash Thompson, who's Peter's bully, you have Lonnie Lincoln. Lonnie Lincoln is an athlete. And what's different about Lonnie is that he's actually a nice guy. He becomes friends with Peter Parker quite easily, and the two spend some quality time with each other. Lonnie unfortunately has problems of his own. He has to deal with the cops who treat him like cops treat every other black person I've seen on the news or film. I'm not a black man living in America, so a lot of that cultural information the show was trying to show, it sort of got lost on me. But Lonnie also has money problems, which is a really, really relatable issue. He also has a little brother who Lonnie saves from some serious trouble and in turn gets into trouble himself. Anyway, Lonnie I think is the most realized character of the show, for me at least, and I really liked him. We also have Harry and Norman Osborn, important players in the show, but they've been race swapped. I have problems with swapping races, but this is sort of an Elseworlds tale, so I guess swapping races works in this case. One of the defining events in the Spider-Man story is that he's sort of an ass in real life. So Uncle Ben has to sit him down and tell him,
"With great power comes great responsibility."
These words don't really register with Peter Parker, and he goes on to live his arrogant life. Somewhere else, sometime else, after Parker becomes Spider-Man, he lets go of a thief because he wasn't being paid to stop the thief. And this thief goes on to kill Uncle Ben. And that's when Uncle Ben's lines, "with great power comes great responsibility," plays on Parker's mind and becomes the bedrock of Spider-Man's life. But in this cartoon, this whole chain of events, Uncle Ben giving him the responsibility talk, Peter not stopping the thief killing Uncle Ben, that never happens on this show. Peter becomes Spider-Man in the show long after Uncle Ben dies. And this was quite surprising for me because I didn't really notice it until much later in the show. I'm not entirely sure how I feel about this. On the one hand, I'm really annoyed that they changed Spider-Man's origin so drastically. On the other hand, I still like the Spider-Man show. So, I don't know quite what to do with that. Alright, that's all I have for this video. I will see you next time.